Our very first talk today is going to be an interview with Patricio. I'm super excited to welcome him. He's been part of our ecosystem for such a long time, and we're going to cover the history and what's next with Patricio. So without further ado, please welcome Patricio on stage.
Hello, good to see you.
You can always spot Patricio with this amazing orange jacket. I may be getting the color wrong.
Unless I don't have it. If I don't have it, none of you find me.
Well, it works really well. And somehow it also matches this event's color too. So I'm equally excited. So our goal is to talk about how this ecosystem has evolved from when you started in this space to where we are now to where we are going. And a lot of you may not know this, but POAP is factually the most adapted non-financial application on the blockchain. And everybody knows what it is. Everybody comes to collect the POAP NFTs. We have over 1 million wallet addresses that hold POAPs right now, and it's just one of community favorites all around. So my first question to you is, can you tell us about the history of POAP? How did the project get started, and what did you want it to do originally, and is this what POAP is now?
That's a good question because there's a lot to unpack. First thing, if anyone doesn't know, or even if you know, it's good to make clear what's POAP because it has changed, it has evolved, and it's something easier than what many of you or even us believe it is. POAPs are digital collectibles. We don't do badges, attestations. POAPs may be an attestation, maybe a badge, but it's a digital collectible. What's a digital collectible? The same thing also of a real world collectible, but digital. And that definition, it may seem pretty basic, but understanding that makes much easier not having to explain NFTs, not having to explain blockchains. You can find any person that wants to know what POAP is, and the best thing you can tell them is it's a digital collectible. And that gets us to that point of how has it evolved? Because it has evolved a lot, and it's important to find the nuance to come to the answer to how has it become the most popular non-financial blockchain application. And it, of course, it's a highly personal story, and it has two fundamentals that made it be what it is. I've been full-time blockchain since 2015. For the first 3 years, I was mostly learning. I've been dabbling into Bitcoin around 14, but mostly from the side. In 15, I finally managed to put my life together in a way that I could dedicate much more time to blockchains, because blockchains, as many of you probably know, and you surely know, blockchain sucks all the productive capacity you may have available. So once I find a way, because it was clear for me, okay, for working on this, I will have to set aside everything else. This cannot be a side hobby. In 2015, I managed to reaccommodate my lifestyle. I go full-time blockchain, and I start mostly learning and trying to make money because I was barely surviving. For setting aside the time, I had to become way more frugal. So between 15 and 18, I am going to all conferences, meeting the most relevant people and also the non-relevant ones. They all have interesting things to say. And also buy and sell things that I find upon, that almost I stumble upon. Mostly, I've been gambling. Once in 2018, we plateau in market sentiment and such, I find myself wanting to do something more meaningful than buying and selling speculative assets that had no value. They were mostly meme coins. We didn't know, but that's what they were. And I start asking myself, how can we do something useful with this technology beyond speculative assets? So that's a fundamental one. The fundamental for how POAP became a thing was I wanted to use this technology for something meaningful in a way out of a moral desire. I felt that the environmental impact we were having, because we were on proof of work at that time, it feels so great to have left that behind. And I was like, we have been destroying this planet for buying and selling these stupid digital assets that make no sense. What can we do better? So I combined that with an obsession that I had from a very early childhood time, which is being a collector. I'm a collector. I've been collecting everything that could be collected around my environment. So unfortunately, on the early days, I found myself pretty lonely. There weren't many collectors in the blockchain space.
And not only that, I mean, in 2018, like Ethereum was just out. Like people didn't know what to do with smart contracts yet, and we were just seeing experiments. So it didn't help.
Saying that it was lonely, it's an understatement. And especially in NFTs, there were maybe 50 people that knew NFTs well, that understood what they were besides buying and selling them. And this combination of wanting to use this technology for something fundamentally useful and organically desired, and my passion for NFTs my passion for collectibles got me to start POAP. And that's what, in my opinion, I consider the secret sauce for the success we had. Because it's like, if you want to invent a wheelchair and you pick 2 random people from this world, and one of them happens to be disabled, chances are that the disabled one builds a much better wheelchair than the random one that wasn't disabled. And it was the same for me as a collector. So there are hundreds of startups building collectibles, and all your favorite NFT collections, like the Patchy Penguins and the Cool Cats and all of them. But the difference with POAP is that the founder of POAP had this combination of wanting to do something good with Ethereum that solves or facilitates his obsession for collecting stuff. So that's kind of the secret sauce for how we got here.
No, that's great. And it sets up a pretty good set of interesting questions I want to ask. So we know your motivations, we know your background and your passion. When you launched it and gave it out to people, is that who do you think people were going to be who will end up using POAPs a few years ago?
Well, that's one of the things I've been the most wrong. I mean, now on hindsight, it's easy to say, but when we started thinking about what value we were creating, the value we create is helping people preserve their memories. This is good to understand also what we do at POAP, because POAP is such a versatile product, and because of composability, it's used for many things, and some that we don't even like people use it for DeFi, trading things. But more than anything else, we help people remember things. It's an ecosystem for the preservation of memories. So I thought that our users were going to be heavy Foursquare users, or people that like social activity and things like that. And theoretically, that did make sense. But in practice, it didn't work. Getting adoption for POAP in the early days was one of the most frustrated things that happened to me. Nobody cared. Crypto people in the communities I had access to, they were focused so much on buying and selling things and DeFi and math. They all like having math and physics and cryptography. And I was around with my collectibles, and for the most part, I was snapped. I was like, I don't care about these things. I don't do collectibles. I'm very glad that I didn't quit. Many times I thought about quitting. And now the thing has turned over. Many people that were like, DeFi is cool and CK is cool, they are like, this is the only thing that I actually use blockchains for. So I was certainly very wrong.
So out of curiosity, was it that people were not sure if they want to represent those memories on chain, or back in the day gas was too high, so they want to spend all the money on transaction fees, or they just didn't know this is something they should care about? What was kind of the interesting sort of point where you thought that people would be more interested, but they turned out to not be?
It's at a lower level, and it's mostly about the noise on the ecosystem. The ecosystem is extremely noisy. ETHGlobal events are quite of an exception on not being a complete blender of different things going on. So when people is exposed to POAP and 50 other things that at first sight are somewhat indistinguishable, it is impossible for them to be consciously deciding, I do this, I don't do this. So they were just snubbing POAP because they weren't unable to qualify the 50 things they had in front of them. And this is why bear markets have been so helpful for us, because when everything market chills, like it's been chilling, and now it got overheated again with meme coins and such, but when the market chills, people say, ultimately, these POAPs are the only thing I have left from that mania, and some of them make them be happy. Actually, most of them make them be happy because they have great memories. Either they were making money or having fun. Going back to your question about what I was wrong, there's something that's ironic, because before running POAP, I was a hardcore crypto person, and I had the full package of being a crypto person. So I hated banks. I am from a pretty underdeveloped country. I've been born and I live in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and we pretty much don't have a banking system as you know it. And I thought that the banking system was this evil creature, like the Bilderberg group of sorts. And you know what? These days, POAP is serving all sorts of mainstream activities, from universities of all colors and shapes, all communities. Portugal, it's a really active market. There's people that do sailing trips and create POAPs. They do parties, all sorts of events, and they use POAP, and they are happy with it, and they understand it, and they want us to thrive. But the market niche, I expect it to be the latest to use POAP, and boy, I was wrong. It's financial institutions. I thought, because of this stupid bias that I had of believing that banks were our enemies, I thought that they were never going to use our collectibles for reasons. In our balance sheet, the greatest source of revenue, these days POAPs only makes money with enterprise partners. We sell services to companies that need help doing NFTs and things with POAP. Our greatest source of revenue, it's banks, credit companies. Swift was identified for so many years as the company we all wanted to disrupt. They love collecting POAPs. They are one of our best source of feedback for new features. It's amazing. And the markets I thought were going to be our hottest markets, live entertainment, like sports, music, art, they like POAP, but they aren't outstanding in volume. They use POAP like everyone else. And this was certainly an assumption. And so you need to challenge your assumptions so you don't make my mistake. Don't be biased by these silly industry biases like banks are evil. I can tell you from firsthand, it's been almost pleasant dealing with banks.
Only as them being your customers, not the other way around, I assume.
Well, I still don't have a bank account. I personally don't. I am bankless.
That's an interesting statement on its own. That's a whole other talk on its own, actually. Well, so that's an interesting point, because when somebody says collectible, you're thinking like, oh, I'm a big fan of this, either like an artist or like a genre of music or game or some kind of known sort of animated thing here, or like I'm a tourist or I like to travel a lot, and that's usually what I'm collecting, and that's kind of the Foursquare audience you talked about. But seems like that was not the right assumption back in the day to actually see if that worked out. And financial institutions are your kind of customers. How are they using it? Like, what are some examples, and what do people use POAPs for nowadays?
We work with many of them. American Express uses POAP regularly, mostly for marketing purposes. They want to position them as different from other credit card companies, and they give digital collectibles to their cardholders to vibe with what's happening. Because I mean, I'm not an expert in great companies, but I guess when you're a category leader, your goals aren't so much making more money. It's more about making sure that you will continue making money. And how do they continue making money? Well, speaking the language of the upcoming generation. And we love working with Amex because they use POAP for the right reasons. They are creating meaningful experiences. They are helping their audiences, their consumers, use blockchain technologies for utility way beyond speculation. They don't do anything speculative. And that was a coincidence. It's not that we wanted it to be like that, this thing that POAPs aren't super financialized. It just happened because of the sidechain we were minting and that we are minting, which is a Gnosis chain, used to be known as NXDAI. It never cognacked NFT craze like other networks. So people associate POAPs with things that you can't even sell. You could sell them, but now we
it's part of your experience and your identity.
Yeah, and now it's highly likely that in the future we will end up blocking the financialization of POAPs.
That's a big announcement.
It is super nuanced, and we will see what the community wants. It's a massive challenge on decentralized governance because we want POAP to be a public good, and the public good has to serve the greatest population we can serve on fair grounds. So we will only de-financialize POAP if that's what makes the most sense for the greatest global good.
I do want to talk about that in a second, but I want to spend a couple more minutes on some other use cases you've seen. So American Express, that's a very interesting kind of insight where they're using that to keep their existing customers happy. But you also have kind of larger partnerships with, I think, like Adidas and Porsche, or I think a couple other, I'm forgetting. But what are some of these other use cases, or are you kind of seeing some common patterns, or are they all using it in different ways?
Yeah, the automaker case, it's very easy to understand. Automakers these days have this challenge, which is they all sell the same thing. They all sell vehicles that take you to point A from point B, and they aren't even too different from each other because of regulation. Like for you to have a road legal vehicle, it cannot be too different. So how do they differentiate themselves? One of the things some automakers do is make their vehicles collectible. And Porsche, for example, they even have a collectors club. So for them, it was only natural to start doing digital collectibles. And the composability benefits that they get by using POAP make much nicer POAP being a solution for onboarding their collectors that mostly are in Web3 savvy, because POAP makes much friendlier a digital collectible experience than a raw mainnet NFT. Like POAP has a native mobile app. There is a company that offers tech support. It's a curated experience, so you are not going to find offensive content on pornography. So as an onboarding solution for companies that are in the business of collectibles, it is funny. And this is kind of old. I don't know if Porsche could like it. But Porsche is more in the business of collectibles than in the business of cars. And maybe not exactly, but conceptually, they create objects of desire. It doesn't even matter if they go fast or far. It matters that people want those and not other ones, which is something that we work very hard in POAP to achieve. It is our mission in our core team, our collectibles to be an object of desire. So the financial institutions things is fun. It has a completely different origin. Just to wrap up the idea of the why financial institutions use POAP, because it's not that they use POAP because they love collectibles. The reason why they use POAP, and you know this, but it's good to make it clear, it's because financial institutions may have the highest density of crypto knowledge out of crypto. So for them, being able to use this technology on which they all have become experts for something that it's not illegal for them, like for many bank employees, holding crypto assets, it's
not allowed. Yeah.
It's completely forbidden. So now they are like, okay, I have spent 5 years learning why crypto is good or useful or bad. And with these little shiny things, I can show, see, my work is meaningful. This is all, it's not all buying and selling things that don't make sense. So that's the definition of financial institutions. The automaker thing, Porsche had this collector club, and although they made very nice cars, what people buy, it's the whole experience. And now the Porsche experience includes getting digital collectibles. And they even came up with a passport thing on which, depending if you go to a track day, if you meet certain test driver, if you go to their factory and their museum, you keep collecting these little POAPs. And I don't know what utility they will have, but they are planning cool stuff depending on how many and different
meet certain requirements, you may get access to certain things.
Which is a no-brainer, right? But the fact that it is happening on the mainstream, it's pretty awesome. We are really proud of having convinced such an outsider, because in crypto, we are all in our bubble, but once you go out of the crypto bubble, making people use crypto right and doing nice things, it's a tough uphill battle.
And even harder if you're doing something that's consumer-facing.
Like in the case, if we were building a wheelchair, for me, doing consumer, it's one of the things I'm the least qualified, because I am a decent collector, I am a decent builder, like I'm not a software developer, but I try to get it. But understanding consumer culture and consumer behavior, I am completely incompetent. So we most are in crypto, right? And this is why consumer adoption of crypto tech is so low.
Give yourself a little bit more credit, Patricio. You've done great. Well, so I feel like I was going to ask you then, do you think is POAP a consumer thing or a B2B? But I feel like you've sort of already answered.
We are finding out. It's been a core mandate since we started POAP in 2018 to be pragmatic and finding out the answers on the way. If you asked me in 2018, 19, 2020, are you B2B or B2C? We didn't have any business. So we were POAP to crypto hardcore people. And we became B2B as a strategy for getting greater distribution. But spiritually, we are as B2B as Ethereum is. Ethereum serves businesses.
That's a really good
Ethereum
analogy.
serves consumers, but more than anything else, it serves humanity. And it is pretty much the same for POAP.
So this actually now tries to connect back to a couple of things you've said in the past, or just a few minutes ago. So if you believe POAP, I mean, you say POAP is a public good. How kind of do you think about what public good is in this context when you have businesses, but also the protocol and individual users who also care, and then the businesses who are also users, but they also themselves have users? There's a lot of things going on. So how do you define what a public good is in this context, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, being a public good doesn't mean being a non-profit. It doesn't mean being biased towards diversity and inclusion or any of that. The concept of public good is pretty abused and yanked from different camps. But all of us use digital public goods every day, like Mozilla and the Go programming language and different toolkits that you use for developing. Like if you're a software developer, almost every command that you type in your console, whether it's curl or get or npm, they are all run by public goods. Some of them are sponsored by enterprises, many of them. Others are volunteer run, others are hybrid. Our model for how to grow POAP into globally adopted public good is Wikipedia. Because Wikipedia, it's, to my taste, the most successful digital public good that we've seen on modern ages. Wikipedia, it's a top 10 website by visitors in an ocean of commercial properties Like in a market on which all the leaders are Silicon Valley companies, Wikipedia is out there with their flag, with their credit, and it is amazing how well they do, and they are financially healthy, they are governed neutrally. There has been tension, but something Wikipedia prides is that they aren't opinionated. Anyone can have a Wikipedia page as long as it's compliant. Anyone can visit Wikipedia. So we don't know how we will get there. When I say get there, being a globally adopted digital public good, but there's prior art that makes us really optimistic. And these digital public goods have gotten there without the power of blockchain applications. Now we are getting better DAO governance, we are getting better incentive mechanisms. So in a way, it feels that we have it easier. Of course, in other angles, we have it harder too, in many. But the transition towards POAP becoming a credibly neutral, scalable, sustainable digital public good, it's one of our greatest baits for hiring, because it helps us hire people that's after quality challenges despite salary or whatever. So certainly a good question.
I think one interesting thing that you sort of touched upon in your answer and just earlier on is that, you've talked about, you just mentioned that you may consider not allowing transfers or rather sells. And with something like this, where the second something is on chain, you effectively get a built-in ability to make that transactional and tokenize things. And that's where composability comes in. That's where what others are trying to do can figure out a way to fit something in. But if that's the world we're going to, where everything can be tokenized and transactionalized, how do you kind of keep the vision and the goal of this being collectible, and how do you keep people happy where these remain a memorabilia of?
Yeah, you're touching one of the most sensible nerves. How do we keep an scarce item, an object of desire, in a universe of abundance? In the future, it is safe to assume that everything will be tokenized. Every text message you send, every picture, almost every action, everything you buy, they will all be tokenized assets, meaning that they will have a timestamp and they will have an ID and they will have clear ownership. And it's going to be a mess. It's going to be disruptive as the internet was. We are at the stage of the SMS messages on the times when an SMS costed $0.25.
10 cents per minute.
Yeah, and that originated on scarcity. And it was great for the business. And it's the same for POAP. These days, we don't have enough block space to tokenize everything. So we only tokenize this POAP, your wedding POAP. How will POAP remain relevant and an object of desire in a world that everything can be tokenized and everything will be tokenized? We have some ideas. We don't have a recipe, but the main fundamental we apply, aspiring to preserve the quality, is curation. POAP does something that hardcore crypto people hate, which is not being permissionless. Although everyone is welcome to do a POAP, it has to be above a bar. If your POAP doesn't have a nice artwork or you didn't put enough effort on the description, it's not going to fly. We don't let you have it. So by doing that, we make sure that pretty much all POAPs that exist are historically relevant for someone. And in a world on abundance, POAPs will be an item that for the collectors mattered. So that's how we plan it. There is a concept in BC, which is the atomic unit. The atomic unit is how you identify the piece that has the value on a platform. And on Twitter, it's a tweet. In YouTube, it's a video. And in POAP, our atomic unit is the POAP. And it doesn't matter if there could be an ocean of abundance on similar items, because what people want is the tweet. And a tweet is a string of charts. It's not different than a blog post or a hacker news article, but the atomic unit, it's what makes people anchor to that concept. So we are redefining our atomic unit, and we believe that we have a solid game. It's not a given, but we have a plan. Like, as we don't have a plan for being a public good, we have a wish. We do have a plan for preserving the qualities that make POAP be a source of happiness for collectors.
So continue to doing heavy curation and make sure that they are meaningful and people are just not making a POAP of every small thing that they can think of, to really keep the interactions and community genuine.
Well, and there's something else that I didn't say, and it's also controversial, making them have a cost. We are slowly transitioning into a model on all POAPs cost money, because they do cost money, at least in curation. So these days we are subsidizing many drops, most of them, like 90% of the drops, we subsidize minting fees and curation costs. But for global scale, we will have to have something more scalable. And money, it's an excellent equalizer because it works across all cultures. This is a problem that we have today. POAP serves as many communities as they exist. And for example, it serves communities on many places that we don't speak the language. And it's like, how do we explain someone in Pakistan that doesn't speak English or Spanish, the languages we serve, that the collectible has to be sweet? We can't, but at least we can make them know that it has to cost money. So when they distribute it, when they decide, what do I do a POAP for? They will probably do one for their wedding. They are not going to do them because they walk around the corner. So yeah, this is quite an alpha drop that POAPs will cost money.
I think you can see a little bit of disappointment in everybody in the audience.
Yeah, but if you really care, you're welcome to join our communities and find out why we are making this compromise. We are pretty proud of it. It's like the finalization thing. It's something that we are going to as a community, and we will see engaged sentiment. Making POAP cost money is a no-brainer. Nobody can come up with a model in which POAPs remain free because who's the sponsor? Like, VCs are funding this strategy, but eventually it has to be sustainable on its own.
It's not a final solution, exactly. Well, don't worry. Anytime you come to any global events, the POAPs will be free for all of you.
Well, yeah, because when people get scared about this, we say, don't worry. Someone will pay them, but it's unlikely to be the collector. We say POAPs will either be paid by the producer, by a sponsor, or only after that, if else fails, by the collector. So I am a collector myself. I don't want to feel schemed every time I get a collectible. We are going to find out the model that preserves the convenience and the pleasant experience that's just financially sustainable.
Hope is not lost just yet. Let's talk about something that's not POAPs. You've been obviously very involved in the NFT ecosystem. We've seen a high and a low, and we've seen that twice in the last few years. What are some interesting trends or themes that you're kind of excited about in the NFT ecosystem, and what do you think is kind of things that people should pay attention to?
Yeah, something interesting about the NFT ecosystem is that it's no one's enemy besides someone that may feel agitated by NFTs, but doing digital assets in the shape of NFTs doesn't disrupt an existing industry, so the ground is more fertile. If you want to build something in DeFi, or if you want to build something in DAOs, for example, because let's understand blockchains as coordination mechanisms, where do we see the most coordination inefficiencies? We see a lot of coordination inefficiency in finance. We see a lot of coordination inefficiency in governance, especially cross-border governance or cross-organization governance. So one could default to say, yeah, let's use blockchains for improve finance or make coordination better. Let's do DAOs. And that makes all of sense. But you have to anticipate that you're going to fight extremely strong incumbents that have all the power, and they are going to make your life hell. While if you're building on NFTs, you are not annoying someone because NFTs are completely new. The concept didn't exist before. Digital property wasn't a thing. So you can invent new things knowing that not only you don't have people that hate you and want you to die, you actually have a whole ecosystem and financing sources that want you to succeed. It's easier to get financing for something that looks like it only needs to evolve to be a success. It doesn't need someone to die for you to win. It's more akin than landing a plane. Landing a plane is extremely hard. You need to be an expert in, or a pilot or something, but at least you can be confident that everyone around you wants to be successful. Your passengers, the people on the ground, the air traffic control, the company, the investors, they all want to land the plane. So you have lots of tailwind. While if you are building on DeFi, it's like trying to score a goal in football against Argentina. You are going to have a hard time. It's like you have Messi playing against you. Good luck.
That's a very interesting analogy. What does that mean for people who are thinking about what to focus on, though? Are you saying that we should think about NFTs maybe behaving more in a self-isolated, standalone way and not try to interact too much with other other kind of themes in this space because the competition is too high? Or are you saying that, hey, I should pay attention to these things or minimize paying attention to some other categories? How do I kind of translate into what should I take away from building something this year or next year if I'm considering starting something in this ecosystem?
Unfortunately, I think anyone building in NFTs have to factor for a longer time frame. You need to be realistic, and you can't expect to be successful in only 1 or 2 years. It's going to take much longer. Even with all the privilege that we have in POAP, we are in this sweet dominant position. We have lots of capital. Our brand awareness is really high. Getting anything done, it's still really hard and tough, and we find ourselves very frustrated. So my main recommendation, if you are building in NFTs, it's just acknowledge that you are building for a market of 10,000 people. And it's going to be hard to make a successful, sustainable business for a market of 10,000 people, especially if you want it to be financially sound. That doesn't mean that it's not worth doing it, because there are only a couple of things that I am more confident than NFTs being something that every human uses in the longer time frame. Like, it's death, taxes, that surely both will happen. Digital assets used by most of the population, it's pretty much a given for me. So you have to be conscious and intentional when you build, knowing that, okay, your market today is 10,000 people. Your market in 10, 20 years is going to be every human.
No, that's right. And this seems like, actually, before I do a follow-up, we may have time for 1 or 2 questions. If you have any questions, I'd recommend you line up there. If we have time, we'll kind of ask those questions to Patricio, but if not, we'll move on to the next talk. It's a very interesting point, though, because a year ago, if you did like a 10,000 PFP collection drop, you kind of had a market for that because you could be sure that there's at least 10,000 people in this space. Those are one-time things. If you wanted to make a business, that's not long-term sustainable yet, because the space is not growing fast enough for you to be sustainable as a business. It's not that there's no demand, it's just the sustainability. Will you survive long enough to do it? And that means there's some interesting things that it kind of forces you to do, whether you just kind of find a way to stick around, or you hope that what you do ends up creating a bigger market, or you look at ways to be part of other communities. Do you kind of see, I mean, this is something we talked about in the past, but kind of how do you think about how DAOs can kind of collaborate with the NFT ecosystem, or kind of looking at something like Nouns, which is like a perfect mix of NFTs and DAOs and public goods and everything else that you can think of in this space. Are there any lessons learned, or are there themes that you think are worth paying attention to?
Yeah, I have a personal bias towards playing long games. That's how I am. By the way, I love questions. So if you have any question, get up to the stand and I will be happy to answer. I tend to play long games. Before Naval, Ravikant was a thing, and before the Infinite Garden was what the Infinite Garden is. But I kind of love it. I love both because it's what I've been doing. So things like 10K PFPs and highly opportunistic cash grabs, I am very happy for those of you that manage to catch them and use that money for good stuff, good for you. It's not a game I know how to play, so I actually would say stay away, don't take shortcuts. In crypto, if you are talented, you are going to be offered all kinds of perversion on your way. You will be offered money so you can make someone more money. My advice is to be honest, to stick to values of collective creation of value, not so much selfish extraction. So of course, it's my opinion, and I know it's not necessarily shared, especially in a highly financialized space like ours. But answering your question, like, my take is clearly play long games. Now, your follow-up, coordination, DAOs, the combination of them, it may very well be the longest game you can play in crypto.
That's a never-ending game.
It is pretty never-ending. And right now, the optionality is the highest it's ever been. There are so many things to do. Nouns, it's, in my opinion, the only one true DAO. I'm sorry if there are other DAO members here, like of MakerDAO, and I love MakerDAO and others, but Nouns, I'm sorry it has failed. For me, I am pretty much done with Nouns, but it was, or it wanted to be, the only one true DAO. Explaining Nouns in this context, it's not possible because how hard it is, but Nouns, it's a mix between collectibles, which I love, art. Art I am pretty careless, but still it means pieces of art, and DAOs and decentralized governance. And it's been a massive lesson. During the weekend on the hackathon, there's a section, is that right? There's a Nouns section.
Yeah, they're getting a space just to kind of talk about just showcasing art.
It is, see how crazy it is. Nouns DAO has voted, I have voted, this is a proposal that I was a hell yes. I'm rarely a hell yes. But it's a proposal for having a team of experts running a section on ETHGlobal Lisbon for explaining people why Nouns is a fascinating experiment. I encourage all of you to visit that section of the hackathon because it's mind-blowing. We've done it in Bogota and in San Francisco and in Mexico. And it is so fun and nice and educating. The knowledge you can acquire while playing games, like football and throwing things at a wall, it is unparalleled. It may be the greatest balance you can find between having fun and playing games and learning about decentralized governance.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it's literally that somebody bought an NFT online, and some of the fees were put into a DAO, and then that DAO got a post where they requested some humans to go to another city to set up a physical station to tell you about what this NFT was and to get people excited about playing games. And all of that happens all in a forum and in the real world. To me, is generally amazing and exciting.
And it can be you. Any of those, the one who buys, the one who sells, the one who plays, the one who creates experience, the ones who travels, it could be any of you permissionlessly.
It's going to be a crazy world.
It already is, and it's getting crazier. So you don't miss the Nouns Feria or Fair. I don't know how they call it this time. It's expected to be really fun.
Awesome. Well, looks like we're out of time. I think it's a great note to end on. I think your advice at the end was really good for founders. Just stay patient. These things take a long time to figure out. And when you're in a situation like us, which is we are growing with the ecosystem and we're doing all these things to grow the ecosystem, it takes even longer to see if your initial hypothesis was true. And you may have to try testing out a lot of things and experimenting a lot to really...
A quick tip, if you didn't apply for this hackathon, the next one, which is Waterloo in Canada, and the one after, which I think is Paris, they both will have Nouns activations.
That's right.
And you should totally apply. You also have to hack. You can't apply to the hackathon only to play games, but it's not that it is a lost chance. This is happening throughout the year. The calendar for this year for ETHGlobal in-person events is the hottest it's ever been. So if you were on the fence, like, do I go all the way to Canada? Do go. It's expected to be excellent.
Thanks for that ad, Patricio. I love it. Well, thank you so much. Please give Patricio a big round of applause.